Save the Semantics episode 292. It is February 5th, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Wednesday afternoon / evening. It's been a kind of a stormy and rainy past week or so. As you know, I tend to like recording things, just kind of being outdoors and that kind of thing. So it's been a little difficult to do that. Also, I've just been a bit busy. Things have been kind of picking up for me with work and stuff. So trying to squeeze in a little bit of time to catch up on some things. But right now we are just kind of right smack dab in the middle of trade deadline. And tomorrow is kind of the final day. It's coming up. It ends at at noon, I think, tomorrow, which is an interesting time, because usually it's like, when you think of deadlines, at least in my head, I usually think of them as being towards like the end of the day. But the NBA kind of works on a different schedule. It's got its own thing going. So that's the rules. That's just how they go about things. But yeah, it's coming right up. After the dust has settled from the two kind of bigger trades from this past weekend, obviously the Luka trade, and then the De'Aaron Fox Zach LaVine trade. There's been some smaller trades here and there. There's a couple of bigger ones today, actually, and I kind of want to get into that. I will say first, I've been an interesting, I think this year in particular, I guess at this point in time, it's interesting because of there's a bit of uncertainty with teams in general, and as a fan, there's a lot of uncertainty. You're kind of even more on edge because of everything that has happened, right? And so it's just like, it feels like anything can go, but it feels like this year in particular, that because of just the names that have been involved, that it feels like a very significant shift in terms of player movement, in terms of kind of the weight, the scale of balance that is happening. You know what I mean? I think, obviously the Luka thing is huge, but De'Aaron Fox going to the Spurs as well feels like a pretty significant move, especially for San Antonio, right? That are trying to kind of, finally move into a position where they are competitive, right? I think there's expectation that they want to, both within the team itself, but also from an outside perspective, that they want to try to make like a play-in / playoff push, right? And I think it feels a lot more viable now with Fox on the team, right? So that feels like a pretty big, shift for them. I think after this year, once they kind of get their pieces a little bit more solidified, more experience for the younger players, and more cohesion between like Fox and Wembanyama, I think they're going to be a pretty formidable team going into next season. I think there's going to be a lot higher expectations for them. There were some pretty high expectations for this team this past, even before the season started, and I think I don't know if they've really met up to those yet. Like, they're still kind of a middling, a little below 500 team at this time, but I think next year, just like one more year, more experience, obviously for Wemby, but also for like Stephon Castle and Vassell and like Sohan and some of their other younger players. Like, they're gonna be better, and they're gonna be a good team. So it's gonna be interesting, right? They're kind of brought into the fold of the playoff picture as well. Not just like within trade discussions as well. Like, I've been seeing, it's been kind of interesting. I've been keeping my eye a little bit on Portland, on the Trailblazers. Like, they're on this like crazy, like, they're on a 5-game win streak, but they've just been winning like a ton over the last like couple of weeks or so. and they're kind of creeping up. Like I'm watching the standings, you know what I mean? Like I'm watching, especially teams that are kind of like near the Warriors, and them along with San Antonio, they're creeping up, man. It's kind of it's looking, I don't know, man. Especially when you have like a young, motivated team like that, like it's man, like it feels kind of reminiscent of like what Houston did last year. Like they almost made it into the play-in last year, but fell kind of short. But this Trailblazers team is kind of is really interesting. I've watched like some of their games in kind of in the past like couple of days, just because they're like they're kind of West Coast time. They're the last game playing, and it just sort of like helps because timing in terms of like when I'm able to tune into games and that kind of thing. But they've just been on, and like last night, like there were some really exciting moments. I mean, there was just a sequence in like the fourth quarter, I think, where it was just like lob after lob after lob, and also it didn't help that Indiana just has kind of a really bad, just bad defense. Like they were just it was just like Lob City, man. It was crazy. I don't know what was going on there, but they seem to be energized. They seem to kind of have this juice, like. I don't know, man. It feels kind of there's sort of like this resurgence with that team. It feels like, I think a lot of people were writing off Scoot Henderson after his rookie year. He didn't have exactly the best performance, but as of kind of recently, it seems like he's been having like a pretty solid, last couple of kind of, weeks of just, having some really good games on his belt, and it looks like he's like developed kind of like a 3-pointer as well, which I don't think he was necessarily known to have coming out of his Ignite days and that kind of thing. So I don't know, man. I think it's easy to write off players, easy to write off younger talent and that kind of thing, but he looks good, man. He had some really fun moments last night, that some lob, some passes that I thought were pretty impressive. So the Blazers look they look interesting, man. And they got some pieces like Tumani Kamara. That dude's a fucking stud. I'm sorry, but I'm trying not to swear. But that dude is a stud. I feel like any team would love to have him. And he was like a second round pick or something. He's awesome, man. Like he's like a 3 and he's like the perfect 3-and-D guy. Like he can defend anyone. Dude, I think any team would just clamor to have someone like him. So it feels like they're in a pretty good position, man. I think I don't know what their path is going to be, if they're going to try to continue to kind of push for play-in, or if they maybe sell off some of their pieces to try to tank and at least get one more lottery pick to join their team. But I don't know, man. It looks pretty good on their end. So. They're interesting. They're an interesting team to kind of keep an eye out on. But yeah. Anyways, let's talk trades that have happened within the past day or so. I don't have the full details up, but so essentially earlier, I think it was this morning, it was the Milwaukee Bucks traded Chris Middleton, and then someone, I think AJ Johnson, for Kyle Kuzma, and then Patrick Baldwin Jr., and then I think like a pick swap or something like that. Interesting trade. I did see, from kind of like the brief, from what I have heard, it feels like it might be a bit of like a damn, like the Bucks are really letting Middleton go. But from what I've seen, like from the play that I've seen from him, he looks, unfortunately, because I do like Middleton. I'm like a sucker for kind of wing players, swingman, small forward kind of players and that kind of thing. But unfortunately, it's kind of it for him, really. Like he's just had so many injuries over the past few years. He's had like double ankle surgeries, which is just gnarly. Like, it's tough, man. It's tough to like rely on him as someone who could be like a tertiary score alongside Dame and that kind of thing. He was coming off the bench already, and he had some like I didn't watch like a ton of Bucks games, just from like box score watching. It seems like he had some pretty good games, but it might, I think, on the front of how the front office felt about him. It feels like they felt that it was just kind of it felt like kind of the end, unfortunately, right? And I don't, this feels like maybe a bit of a gamble going for someone like Kuzma, who hasn't really played any meaningful basketball in like 5 years, being on the Wizards, right? But I think I think that's like a decent upgrade. You know what I mean? Because then you get size, you get a little bit more athleticism and youth. He's not like the youngest player. He's like 29, I think. But he is younger than Middleton, who's 33, 34, I think. So you get younger in that regard. You get more size. He hasn't really been that good this year, but he could kind of try to maybe resuscitate himself to what he maybe was a few years back, which was more of like a 20 point, plus scorer, or just, him being in that role where it's not going to be required of him to be like a number one option. I think might be beneficial to him. I don't know, but it feels, in my eyes, I think it's maybe a bit of a gamble, but it's like, what do you got to lose? Like, you weren't really winning anything with Middleton anyway, so like at least this gives you somewhat of a chance to compete in some instances, right? Have some size against some of the larger teams, like I think like in terms of like wing size, like with Boston and Cleveland and that kind of thing. But I don't know. It's something, it might be kind of a shot in the dark considering everything, but I do feel that it was it's a worthy try at this point. Just seeing some of Middleton's plays, like he's had some like good moments for sure, like recently, but I did see, I think I was just maybe watching like the last like 2 minutes or something of, because I was just sort of like going through and scrolling through surfing through NBA games. And I think they were playing Memphis, and he just had some like bad turnovers, and I'm like, dude, it just feels very like slow, and he was like slow to get back to defense. Like, it just, I don't know, man. I felt like it was kind of drawing near, and I totally understand, Bucks fans feeling maybe let down by this decision, but I don't think you guys are going to make it that far anyway with this squad. Like, everybody is so old. Like, at least you can be like somewhat, maybe a little bit younger with Kuzma in the lineup. So I maybe that might give them a little bit of a chance to do something. I don't think anybody expects this team to be like a championship contender this year, considering everything, because they've had like a pretty up and down season too, right? They won the NBA Cup, which is good for them. That might just end up being their championship this year. So yeah, that might kind of be, that might be it. Honestly, I don't know. We'll see. Anything is kind of possible with Giannis, but just the surrounding pieces around him are just, they're all old, and they're not getting any younger. So having someone like Kuzma might kind of alleviate some of the weight put on Dame and Giannis. The other trade that happened, I mean, there was like one other trade that was like a smaller one. I think it was a KJ Martin to the Pistons. It was like a salary dump essentially by the Sixers. So that's not really too much to comment on. The other trade that happened was Jonas Valanciunas to the Kings, which I think happened pretty recently, in the last like few hours or so. So that one's pretty interesting. It seems like the Kings are really trying to kind of, it seems like they're really kind of trying to be somewhat of a, decently rounded team. I mean, look, we'll get to the Warriors, and the fact that they haven't done anything so far, and just how much of a kind of a roller coaster it's been during this trade deadline. But like, at least, look, man, I have to give some props to Sacramento for making some moves. Like, they moved off of Fox, who clearly wanted out, and they got some pieces. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they're gonna be anywhere near the top of the West by any means, but they got, I don't know, it's just like a collection of like solid players, you know. I think there may be a better version of what the of what the Bulls were in a way, like a slightly better version of like the Bulls of like the last couple of years. I don't know, like they could be fun, you know, they got some fun players, but at least they're like trying to do something. I think there's, just considering who they have, there's a bit more of this maybe incentive to try to win as much as you can. They're not going to win, you know, they're not going to win the championship by any means, but they can be competitive. So it might be something, you know. They might be an interesting team to watch over the course of the rest of the season. And I think that I think, you know, some people I've heard would kind of want them to go into kind of like a rebuild situation similar to what the Bulls have sort of, you know, leaned towards, although they still have Vucevic, which is like, all right, you gotta, like, it's one more domino and you guys are gonna be there, and then you just kind of let the young guys, you know, run free. I mean, it might be helpful to have like I don't know, how helpful to have like maybe a vet or something, but I don't know. I think at this, you gotta try to get those young players on the Bulls some run time. So I think, you know, it feels like the Kings are at least like, they could sort of be middle of the pack. Like, they're definitely better than the Warriors. They're definitely better than us right now, with what they have. So it's like, okay, you know, I feel they have kind of reason to be hopeful and at least get into the playoffs, you know. So, I mean, good for them, you know. That gives kind of them like what, a backup center behind Sabonis. So it's like, all right, and they got Levine. It's a pretty good haul, you know. Like, getting back, like, you know, after consecutive trades of the initial trade for Fox, and then they got Levine, and then they got Valanciunas. Like, and then I think they got some picks as well. It's like, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good deal. So good for them. At least someone is making moves out there. Unlike the Warriors, it has been like, just kind of keeping up with whatever updates that have been coming out has been, man, it's been a roller coaster. Just a swing of emotions here and there. Earlier, and this was kind of like yesterday, really, or the last couple of days, there's been talks of KD coming back to the Warriors, and it's been kind of this, it feels like there was like a push to do that and to make that happen. And I was like, oh shit, get the band back together for one more thing. I don't, you know, again, I don't really expect too much, really, like, at this point of these guys' careers, but it might have been just fun for just like a kind of like nostalgic reasons, and also maybe like a chance to be, you know, pull off some upsets. But that has just hit a wall, and I don't think it's gonna happen. It seems like calls have just been, you know, completely shut off because KD is not interested in coming to the Warriors. So it's like, I don't know what his reasons are. What are his reasons for not coming back? Is it a Draymond thing? Do they still have kind of some animosity towards each other? Like, I feel like they did kind of, you know, didn't they squash it? Like, I feel like they talked it over, but I don't know. Maybe he's just not interested in coming back. Like, he's just, you know, he's ready to sort of, he's moved on from that, you know, that time of his career, and is not interested in kind of looking back. But yeah, so I don't know. Is he going to be on the Suns? Is he going to get traded to like the Heat with like Jimmy Butler? I don't know why that's still like, dude, I just like, and now the Warriors are like trying to get Jimmy again. I'm like, I know what I said I said that I'm okay. I'll be like, listen, they should trade for Jimmy if they can. Like, I don't know. At this point, it feels like disheartening because you go from KD to like Jimmy again, and it's like a clear downgrade. No disrespect to Jimmy Butler, he's good, but it's different, and especially for a guy that has clearly stated that he's not going to sign an extension. It's like, okay, if that's said, it's like, how much of an effort is he going to give this year? It's like, I don't really trust that. I don't really want to put too much stock into that kind of thing, especially having seen some of the effort and also just all of the drama that comes with him as a player. It's like he might come and then he might leave it kind of even more of a mess. That's kind of the concern here. You know what I mean? And I know what I said. Like, this year is kind of the year. But also I don't want it to, I don't want the Warriors to just become so dysfunctional that they can't even like move forward from this era. So it's just like, I get it. Like, it's hard. It's a hard balance to kind of follow, but man, it's kind of disheartening seeing just like, yeah, we're reaching out to everyone. We reached out to LeBron. It's like, dude, I don't know, man. It just feels a bit of a desperation act. I get it. Like, I mean, look, I understand because I would probably be in the same position. I would absolutely do whatever I can to try to get someone with Steph, but it just, man, it feels like it's kind of like too little too late. They've had some openings last year. There was conversations about Lauri Markkanen and some other players out there, and that just didn't really ever materialize, right? Like, I didn't really expect the Utah to really do too much. It didn't feel, I don't know, it never felt like there was any semblance of a trade coming, and they're doing whatever they're doing over there, and they're succeeding at trying to kind of rebuild and stuff. So whatever, good for them. But it feels bad. It feels bad. I don't know what. I don't know. Maybe by the time I finish recording, and this is just my hope every time that something gets done, and maybe we get like a surprise player. It's like, oh, no way, we got this dude. It's like, oh, I didn't even see that coming. No way. But I just don't. At this point, right now, it doesn't feel like anything is really happening. Unfortunately, it's like, okay, Jimmy Butler's back on. I don't know, man. Just doesn't feel good. Like, I know I've said that I would be okay with taking him on, but I'm also, I understand what comes with that. And it also seems there's conversations about Vucevic, and it's like, okay, maybe there's like a center, stretch five kind of thing. We kind of have a stretch five. We got Quentin Post. He's been playing pretty well, but I don't know. Maybe it would be fun to have two stretch fives. Is that worth it? Is he gonna do anything for us? Is Vucci gonna do anything for us? I don't know. It doesn't. It feels like we're kind of stuck. We're kind of stuck where we are, which is what I've kind of said over the course of this season. So we might just be like fighting to get into the 10th seed. This feels like that year. We had a nice win against Orlando the other night, but Orlando's also kind of struggling right now. They're just not doing super well. So we kind of caught them at the right time. And we're playing the Jazz tonight, which is kind of like, I don't know, dude. I mean, the Jazz aren't good, but anything kind of happens. Anything can happen, and we'll see, man. I don't know if we come out of this without doing anything. I don't know, dude. Just try, like, and it might be an underwhelming trade to do like a little side thing. I mean, that's kind of what we did in the off season, and I felt like it was like a pretty decent. It felt like a pretty decent acquisition in terms of getting Healed and Melton and Anderson. I was like, those are three solid like rotational players, and unfortunately, it all fell apart and it didn't work out because of Melton's injury history, and then Healed's just historic up and down, which has just been his entire career, which we all bought into and were led astray at the beginning of the season, and Kyle Anderson has been kind of iffy, unfortunately, which I was feeling a little more hopeful about him. But yeah, so I mean, look, I liked those moves from Dunleavy. It just didn't work out. So it might be another fringe type move. Probably not. We're not getting any stars because no stars are really. Aside from a surprise, Luka thing, I don't expect there to be another star out there that's really available. So yeah, it's a little disappointing, but it's kind of the season. That's been, this season, last season too. And I just like just try to be like a play-in team, I guess, is sort of the hopes. But like I said, there's a lot of younger teams below us that are really trying to push. And I think the Mavs are also like 11th as well. So it's like we're surrounded by teams that are either better or hungrier than us to want to compete. So I am just kind of trying to reserve a ton of expectation, but I just if it just give us something, try something, just try to move the needle like just slightly if you can, if that's even possible, give us a little semblance of hope. I'm not like the most hopeful person right now, obviously, because of all the things I've already laid out, but just give us a little something to work with. So yeah, it's been like outside of just my free time has just been occupied with like trade and basketball stuff, like that's really been kind of the thing that's taken up the majority of my time, honestly. And it's been fun to kind of keep track of player movement and how other teams are dealing with things, and the excitement from certain teams that have made moves and that kind of thing. So it's been cool to see that. So happy for the teams that have gotten stuff done. Good for you. Yeah, so really outside of that, that's just kind of been what's occupied my time. So mostly, I don't know if like a big trade happens tomorrow or tonight, I'll obviously talk about it. Maybe like tomorrow, just immediate reaction, and I'll try to get that up if I can. But I don't know. We'll see, man. If not, I'll probably save any more kind of any more thoughts until this weekend. Super Bowl's this weekend too, which is pretty crazy. I mean, I don't know. I'm sort of, it's cool. It's like I might watch some parts of it. But outside of that, we'll see, man. We're leading into kind of the All-Star break, which is coming up next weekend. So that should be kind of like a time, sort of like a rest period before we really get into just kicking into gear into leading into the playoffs. The final sort of third of the season is going to be pretty hectic, right? Got a pretty, pretty stacked, or just kind of jumbled West and East as well, like just a bunch of teams just trying to compete for playoff positioning. So it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to all of that, and I am hoping that the Warriors can at least do a little something, so Steph can get some help. So yeah, I'm going to leave it off at that. If anything does happen tomorrow, or again tonight, I will talk about it tomorrow, but until then I will save any discussions until this weekend. All right, recording this on February 6th. It happened. Trade deadline was today. While I was recording yesterday, the Jimmy trade happened. Jimmy Butler was traded to the Warriors for Andrew Wiggins. Who did they give up? Obviously, Wiggins is kind of the main piece from the Warriors. They also gave up Kyle Anderson, Dennis Schroeder, and I think Lindy Waters, but players are going in like different teams to kind of like make like the salaries match or whatever. But yeah, it happened. It happened like right as I was kind of recording yesterday, so timing was impeccable there. But yeah, I mean, listen, my thoughts about it haven't really changed necessarily in terms of like because I do think it is a bit it is kind of a bit disappointing to go from KD rumors to Jimmy Butler rumors, but look, man, you take what you can get, and I still have my reservations, but look, I can't. I've said all of my stuff about them not doing anything. They did something, so I have to kind of acknowledge that, you know what I mean? I can't like backtrack and be like, oh, maybe they shouldn't have to. No. No, I think if you want to make a risky move, now is kind of the time. And they did it. They went for it. And based on all of the pieces that went out, and what we kind of get back in terms of his extension and whatever, it seems like it's okay. Like it seems relatively reasonable, aside from just the monetary value of like 60 mil a year. Like it's like you can almost, it sounds ridiculous, but you can almost disregard that in a way, because it's just like it's just it's superfluous in a lot of instances in this situation. So, and it is just for 2 years, so it's not. We know what the window is. It's now. It's literally right now. And so I don't know. We'll see what the fit is, man. We'll see what the fit is. I'm interested in seeing how it works out. I am looking forward to kind of seeing a change of pace. You know what I mean? Because it's been a while since we've really made like, since the really the championship years. Like it's been a while since there's been like there hasn't really been any huge names attached, right? So it'll be interesting to see kind of how Jimmy fits into the schematics of everything, the offense, the defense, just the system, the Warrior system and all that. So I'll definitely be, looking forward to that. It sounds like he's going to play, probably not tonight, cause too soon for, he has to get acclimated to come to, come over here. The Warriors are playing the Lakers tonight, but I think that when we will see them come together is going to be on Saturday when they play against the Bulls. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. Like I said, I have kind of my reservations on how this could go. This could go badly, of course, but we did something. I'm hoping that we can kind of get the best version of what to expect from Jimmy, because he has had some like decent moments during this year, despite all of his, theatrics off the court, right? Earlier in the season, he had some nice like games here and there. So he is still very much capable of being that person, right? And we know what to expect from him if we are able to kind of get into postseason, into kind of the postseason. But, yeah, we'll see, man. I feel like we have like this kind of short window of sorts. So it kind of, I have this sort of weird optimism that it might actually sort of work out in a way. I don't expect us to be, we're not winning, I mean, you never know, but I just don't. I just don't see this roster. Like Jimmy is not going to fix everything. I saw, yesterday's game against Utah was a very kind of clear. It was just such like an obvious ending. It is such like an obvious result of after winning like a pretty impressive win against Orlando, who's like a pretty good team this year. They've had their ups and downs, but they have a lot of pieces that would bother us in most occasions, but we were able to pull it off, and I was like, okay, that was good. But then immediately you go and you lose in pretty piss poor fashion, where essentially you just honestly, both Steph and Dre really had some stinkers, like, towards the end of the game. Like, I don't know what, like, Steph just, like, he kind of, I mean, big thing was that they blew, like, a 10-point lead with, like, 3 minutes to go or something. So that was not great. And then when they were, eventually down by one, we had the ball. It was maybe like a second between the shot clock and the, the regular clock difference. And he just rushed a shot. Like, there was still like 12 seconds remaining. I was like, take your time, or take a timeout or something. You know what I mean? And it was just really bad execution. And, yeah, it was a very, yeah, I mean, that kind of fell on Steph and kind of Draymond too, because he also had just a bad shot attempt, like he just got blocked by Walker Kessler for going for like a layup and stuff, and it just felt like they just threw that one away. So, I mean, it's just like quintessential like 500 like basketball, right? It's like, oh, we won against the Thunder. Oh, then we lose against I don't know, who cares? Like, it's some other team that we probably shouldn't be losing to in most cases. So it's just this flip-flop back and forth that it's been that way this entire season. And maybe bringing Jimmy in will bring some semblance of stability. I don't know. Maybe he can kind of take off some of the decision making from Steph, because like, and also just watching last night's game, he had, he didn't have like he there were definitely moments where he was chucking up shots because there just was not anybody else that could really score. Buddy Hield had like a decent game, but he just was not reliable down the stretch because of his defense, right? He just had some bad moments of just, not keeping his eye on his defender. And so it just, like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm hopeful that, like, Jimmy would at least kind of provide some levity and some, balance of power, so that Steph's not the only one taking all of these shots, right? I don't think he's gonna fix all of our offensive woes, right? Like, we still, I wish that it had gone through, that we would have gotten Vucevic. Like, it would have been something, you know what I mean? Again, he's someone that would have fit in our time frame. He's been having a good season, but for some reason the Bulls just continue to be just this weird floundering organization who is like, okay, it seems like, and I mentioned this like yesterday, and also, during the kind of in the past weekend, of like, it feels like the Bulls are finally picking a direction, but it's like they aren't. It's like Vucevic is like the last piece, but they just, for some reason, they're like not willing to give him away. It's like, how much, no disrespect to him, he's a good player, but like, he's not really, like, outside of us, because we would want, some size, like any size, honestly, and the capable five. I know defensively he's not good, but like, we could, with like, with the Draymond and Jimmy, I think we would be able to sort of massage that a little bit, you know what I mean? But for some reason the Bulls are like, nah, we're not gonna go for, we're gonna, and then also, from just kind of like the brief thing that I've heard from after the trade deadline, it was just like their GM just talking about, we're sort of like in a transitionary period where it's like, maybe we could go into, playoffs. It's like, dude, I feel so bad for Bulls fans. Like, that just sounds so infuriating. And listen, I can't even imagine, because I've been frustrated with what the Warriors have, or just like the lack of what the Warriors have been doing over the past couple of seasons. Now they did finally do something, but the Bulls are kind of stuck in this weird sort of like purgatory thing again. I mean, they've just been stuck there for a while now, but it just feels like they continue to do so. It's just like a mismanagement of just like all of their assets and talent and whatnot. Like, it never seems like the Bulls are figuring it out. I understand. Look, man, I understand that losing sucks, and it's like you want to show your fans that you have like a, it's like competitive, like you want to see your team win. Absolutely. Like I completely understand that. Losing sucks, but you can still make it fun. You know what I mean? Like during the really bad years, like the earlier years when I first started watching the Warriors, like of course it was frustrating. I was just like, God, dude, this team, man. Like I know and I understand that feeling, but but they were able to kind of just based on the rules and kind of the stipulations of the draft and how drafting works in terms of, you know, if you are a bad team, you are more likely to get a higher seed or a higher pick in the draft, which results in you getting a potential franchise player. Like that is just kind of how it's set up, and it sucks that it is that way, right? Like it's unfortunate that you essentially have to be bad in order to get good, right? Like that, it doesn't really make sense in most like contexts, right? Like it's like you want to like sort of like continually retool and improve and stuff like that, but unfortunately, based on the way the league is set up, it just doesn't work that way, and it doesn't seem like the Bulls are really gonna ever subscribe to that. It's just like, dude, like this draft is like you have the chance to get some potential franchise players, and like you can be bad like maybe a couple of years, and then you could maybe just kind of bounce back into a playoff position. It's like you can't just like, and they're not a good team either. So it's like, what do you can't. It's like there is no chance of this roster, the Bulls roster as they are, of ever like competing at all. Like they are like 10th seed. The Sixers are most likely going to pass them, as they should. And so the Bulls can, get like a pick. If they do get into kind of the lower seeds in the Eastern Conference, they will have a better chance of doing that. But it's just like they're not acknowledging it. It's just like, we want to see them win games. It's like it feels so wishy-washy, and I would hate to like be just like this, just be stuck in this kind of area of like it just not committing to like a specific direction, you know what I mean? Like that's really frustrating. And this is all to say, look, I've talked about the Bulls quite a bit, which is funny because I'm not like, again, I'm like a secondary sort of fan because I've liked players on their team in the past. This is all to say I'm happy that the Warriors did something. I don't know what it's going to result in. I'm not expecting like a ton, but it might be something. It's something different. They're doing something different. They're kind of throwing their cards in. I don't know what the fit's going to be like, but it's worth trying. And that's just kind of what I've been saying this whole season, and they did that. I would have loved to get KD. It didn't happen. We just got to do what we can. Jimmy might just be the next best option, and so we just got to roll with what we have. So I'm interested in seeing how it goes on Saturday when they do play, and when he plays and he suits up for the first time. So that's that, man. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm just happy that they did something. It might not end up going. Listen, if it just seems like they're gonna be like the same sort of team, it is what it is. But they did try something, and now we know what happens, and and now we can sort of like accept that this is like this is the position that they're in, and you just kind of have to move on and accept where we are. Which I am kind of, I've been ready to do that. Even if they didn't make any moves, I would have definitely been kind of, upset and a little disappointed, but that's just kind of the business of things. I get it, but I'm glad that they went for it, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. Bunch of other trades happened between yesterday and today's trade deadline, which is at like noon. And so I was kind of listening to podcasts, covering it while working and stuff. So it's just, trying to catch up as much as I can, but a ton of trades happened. Some of the big ones, was DeAndre Hunter going to the Cavs, which feels like a pretty big win for Cleveland. I think they get, even more, just like a solidified like starting five with Hunter kind of slotted in there. And they didn't. It doesn't seem like the Cavs really had to give up much in the trade with Atlanta. So good for them. Like it feels like they're further kind of solidifying themselves as to be, one of the maybe contenders of not just the Eastern Conference but just the league in general. The Lakers got Mark Williams, which is kind of like an interesting. Like I'm a little confused about that for like the Hornets in doing so, because essentially they've traded away both of their centers, right? Because it was Nick Richards who got traded and then Mark Williams. I'm like, I feel wasn't. I thought that at least one of them was going to be kind of part of the future, but I guess not. Like it was just like an interesting move. I don't know. But it seems like they got like a lot of picks for, a lot of picks for it. So it might work out in the favor of the Hornets, and the Lakers kind of have a center in the replacement of Anthony Davis, and alongside Luka and LeBron and all that. So I don't know, maybe it works out for both sides. The Raptors get Brandon Ingram. This was one I was kind of confused about a little bit. I was like, it just seemed kind of weird to sort of pivot in that direction, especially the position that they are in now. But after I listened to some like podcasts and discussions like late last night from kind of some Raptors commentary people and podcasters, and I think they did a pretty good job of laying out why this actually is a pretty good deal for the Raptors. Despite them getting maybe a player that seems like it's like a win now sort of thing, I think they are sort of in a position to where they can continue to sort of tank and retain a lottery position while also expecting Ingram to be a part of, kind of the rotation, a part of the starting lineup next year, and seeing what the fit looks like for them, right? Because he's currently injured, right? I don't think he's been playing a lot. So it will be that's a pretty fascinating kind of decision by the Raptors to do that, because it's like I don't know what the fit is going to be exactly, because it feels like they have like a bunch of wings and stuff. They already have Scotty Barnes, they have RJ Barrett, and if they somehow get into like the first pick and get like a Cooper Flag, that feels pretty bloated at that kind of position. But I don't know, maybe they can like try to work that into something, and it sounds like with this move it gives them the option to maybe even push into being a competitive team again next year, as their team kind of further rounds out, and maybe they can get a significant draft pick, and their current draft picks get better, and Scotty Barnes gets better. Like it might potentially work out. And it also seems that the trade was pretty like low cost for the Raptors. So at first, like if you see that, you're like, why are they? That just seems like a weird kind of move. But hearing thoughts from people that cover the Raptors more in depth, it's like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. So that seems like something. I don't know I don't know how that's going to work exactly. I've liked Ingram. I think he was kind of involved in some rumors with the Warriors as well, right? When we were still kind of in pursuit of like somebody to put aside Steph. I do like how he plays. I think a lot of people kind of make the comparison to him being kind of like a Durant light, without maybe some of the defensive capabilities. But I still like him. I still think he's like a pretty good player. He had some fun moments when he was in New Orleans. There were some cool moments where they almost upset the Suns, like a couple of, like a few seasons ago. And that was like a pretty fun run. Unfortunately, just because of all the injuries that New Orleans sustained, especially to like, someone like Zion. It just didn't work out for them. It never felt like they really reached their full potential. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what his role is going to be like on Toronto, and how it sort of fits in with the rest of their pieces. Because I do like their players. I like Scotty Barnes. RJ Barrett's like cool. And I thought I enjoyed watching like Emmanuel Quickley play in New York and stuff. So I think he might have kind of a chance to flourish. I know he's been injured as well, so a lot of injured pieces, but maybe next year is kind of like once everybody gets healthy, it'll give them a chance to really do something, push for something, improve, maybe get into like a playoff position. The East kind of feels pretty open. It's probably going to be even more open next year, considering where other teams might be. And so like you just never know. So it could be, it could be something for them to do. Other trades that happened, it was kind of like, there was one that I heard, it was just like really wacky there was just like a ton of moving pieces, but I think the main thing was like Marcus Smart going to the Wizards for some sort of like draft compensation, which is pretty interesting. I didn't really realize, because I don't really watch the Grizzlies, right? I didn't realize that he was not really a big part of their rotation anymore, which was pretty, kind of surprising considering what they sort of gave up to get him and in sort of the pursuit of him. But it seemed like it didn't really work out. He didn't fit alongside Ja. I don't know exactly what the misfit was exactly, but it's a pretty, him going from like defensive player of the year with the Celtics to now. I know he was injured last year as well, but it feels like a pretty steep decline. I don't know, like I don't know exactly what happened with him, but that seems like a kind of a case to maybe take a look at, because I don't know, I haven't followed the Grizzlies, so I'm curious to hear what exactly kind of happened. It just maybe the fit didn't really work out. So there was that. I'm trying to think of some other moves that happened that were some of the bigger ones since yesterday, that I kind of already talked about. Did I talk about the Middleton Kuzma trade? I think I already talked about that. Yeah, I mean, I think I might have touched. I mean, there were some other smaller ones as well, but I don't really know if it's really worth noting. Those are the big ones, man. And Jimmy's with the Warriors, so it's been a pretty, because like last year, I remember last year's trade deadline. It was not even close to what this was this year. So it was all in all pretty exciting to see just all of these moving pieces and everything. And I mean, it kind of shakes up the league quite a bit. I also just want to kind of give some praise to Andrew Wiggins, who's with the Heat now. Just like he had such an awesome run during the 2022 championship run. He was just instrumental in that, both just, offensively and defensively. Like he was really kind of the key. Like we would not have won the championship without him. And so I think just him helping this franchise. I mean, this was a really special championship too. Just Steph getting his first like finals MVP and everything, and just all the pieces just clicking at the right time, and Wiggins just having the best season of his career and everything. Just, it really worked out, and it was beautiful. It was just like a beautiful run, and sad to see him go, but I think that he was just he was great, man. He was great for us. I'm really happy that he was kind of able to sort of shake off a lot of the, I don't know, just a lot of the sort of the negative sort of press that was maybe given to him during Minnesota. Because he was like the number 1 pick, I think, for Minnesota. So there was a lot of pressure on him to kind of be that player. And it just didn't really work out. And he really, fit alongside, Steph and everybody else on that roster at that time, and it was just perfect. And yeah, he was great, and sad to see him go, but I'm very just happy that he was able to, for what he was able to do for the franchise and the fans and everything. So yeah, good stuff. I don't know if I'm going to record this weekend. Like, I'm also going to be a little busy as well, with some things. So I might, Friday, not Fridays, Sundays, like the Super Bowl and stuff. I don't know. Well, maybe I'll talk about that, in kind of the upcoming, after the weekend and stuff like that. So, but I think I'll probably leave it off here. Honestly, I might post this a little earlier, when I'm able to kind of squeeze some time, just because I think it might be fun to just get this out, because it fits along with the trade deadline and everything. And if I post this like next week, it might be a little too late. So I might actually post this pretty quickly after I record, if I do remember to to do that. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. A lot of trade deadline talk, a lot of exciting stuff happening, not just with the Warriors, but across the league in general. So that's kind of just been really occupying, my time outside of work and everything. So that's just kind of been one of the things that's been keeping me sort of going in a lot of ways. It's been fun to kind of catch up on that when I've been able to, and listen to a lot of different people talk about what's been going on. It's been exciting, man. It's been a really exciting trade deadline, probably the first time that I've been really engaged with what's been going on. Yeah, I'm now we're sort of going, next week we're going into All-Star break, and then afterwards again, we're going to be kind of in the thick of it, leading into, the playoff push. So that's going to be kind of the next big step in the season. So looking forward to all of that. Looking forward to obviously talking about some games and, what it looks like with Jimmy on the Warriors and everything. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. I don't know, either this weekend or early next week. But for now, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thanks for always listening. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.